Hi everyone, it's me, Frankenstein. Today's episode is the long-awaited Moomin Valley Anarchist retrospective. Um, but first, just so I'm not a random person on the internet yelling at you, I am a YouTube content creator who makes honestly anything that I find an interest in. And one of the things that I've recently been hyper fixated on is these little guys, part of the Moomin Valley world or verse, I guess. Um, they have single handedly given me something to watch while I am actually seeing the world burn in front of me. My news feed makes me feel like there's nothing we can do. And at least when I watch Moomin Valley, I'm thinking about what a world could be instead of what the world is. So, yeah, Moomin Valley, it's a show where the titular characters stand in the center of the Moomin Valley, right? In the subsequently named Moomin House, where a number of cozy and familiar faces roam, all of which have their own lives while also being in direct association with each other by their own free will, for the betterment of everyone in Moomin Valley. The show where the titular characters lack any definable features apart from having really big sniffers. There are mentions that anarchy is an entirely idealistic worldview, or that it would mean complete chaos and the destruction of all the wrong and right morals. But this isn't true, right? There's a lot more themes to anarchy that I think would help save this dying husk of a society we live in currently. The groundings to an anarchist society, or what we need in order to accomplish one, is a few things. 1. Mutual aid. 2. Community and solidarity. And 3. Conflict solving proactively, by means of thinking ahead of how to solve problems, rather than the eye for an eye ideology that so many of us subscribe to. Another is the focus on human curiosity, not by any monetary incentive, which would lead to human innovation, sure, but without the monetary incentive, it would lead to human innovation by people, for people. And the final obstacle to obtaining all these goals for society, or even just a few communities, is by getting the feeling of apathy out of the minds of those affected by hegemonic norms of how society should be. Only by getting rid of this sense that we cannot change unless everyone changes can we bring change. Change starts inwardly. Change starts from the individual and it spreads. These themes can be found throughout Moomin Valley, through various characters and moments, and that is why I decided to begin this retrospective on the show to begin with. Everyone knows Snufkin is clearly an anarchist, breaking up signs and destroying rules that he doesn't like, but many of the diehard fans see him as an anarchist and understand that, but don't have a really good grasp of what anarcho principles are. And for the uninitiated, anarchy is a political ideology without rulers or powers of authority, where goodwill and trust being the currency, and expertise holds more power than any hegemonic ideas of power which invoke title or rank. There's never any rigid framework that all anarchists work from, and that's okay, because everyone has their own autonomy to live as they choose, as long as it doesn't detriment society or the surrounding community. To get into the first theme, mutual aid. Mutual aid is the idea of helping your fellow creatures and allowing for compassion and kindness to take the forefront of your thoughts. When someone asks for a meal at the loss of your own ingredients, you wouldn't mind giving it to them because if you don't help, who will? And even if you thought that maybe someone else would, you would want to help because then maybe one day that person would repay you back and forth. Um, when someone in your community needs a place to sleep for the night, why not allow that? Because one day you may need that person's help. We all need each other, especially if we want a world where everyone has the autonomy to do whatever they please, when they please, without police, as long as that action does not disturb another person's autonomy. This idea is pervasive throughout the show. There's either a character like Snork Maiden or perhaps our botanist, the Hermelian, who may come help identify a plant or even when Snork Maiden is in need of a place to hibernate during winter because her brother, who is an inventor, wants to work throughout the winter. So Moomin Papa and Moomin Mama have no problem taking her in because Moomin likes her, or they have familial connections, or maybe it's just purely because they know each other. Mutual aid is that. Mutual aid is offering help or giving it purely because you can. In modern society, we've lost this due to many reasons, chief among them being capitalistic individualism or rugged individualism. This idea is not lost, however, even in modern society. Each time you give money to a houseless person or keep quiet when someone steals from a Woolworths, that's anarchy. Or any major corporation. It doesn't have to be a Woolworths. Anarchy is kind. It's sweet, It's free, but it can also be violent. It can be cruel, but never without a reason. The dream of anarchy doesn't have to stay that it can be achieved by small steps. Doesn't have to mean that it's idealistic or is something that can only be achieved in a far distant future. Rather, it should be seen as something that can be achieved by small steps every day. The compersion of a loved one to the care of a stranger in your building. This is anarchy. One of the few gripes, though, that I've witnessed a few people have about anarchy is how it would work on a global scale or any scale larger than just a country or community. This question is a tad bit ignorant since anarchy is without rulers but not without rules. So the rules can differentiate between place to place. Not every person on earth following this one anarchist system on a global scale. Moomin Valley is a white perspective on anarchism. This makes sense when diving into the creator, Tove Jansson, who is a Finnish writer, also a lesbian, who is also a creative who understood the effects that heteropatriarchy has had on the people in where she grew up. Anarchists in Finland take the shape of loose conglomerations of shepherds or robbers, unused to political organization. They cannot therefore excite the same interest nor awake the title of anarchy, but the same sympathies as an anarchist society still are found in those agglomerations. Former uprisings of Greece or Italy or Hungary show these, and it happens when there's political unrest in society. Anarchy takes the main stage, because anarchy is the only way that an oppressed folk of people can survive. Through the work of the director Hiroshi Saito, who made Moomin Valley 1996, cannot be understated since he created so many beautiful works that breathe nostalgic life through each part of animation. His writing and screenplay is very chibi-coded and allows for the viewer to really open up to the community within the valley. I mean, they mention heading to the witch's house and you start to have a mental image of where it is. This is not to say that anarchism is an inherently white ideology, though. There are instances of anarchism all across Africa and Latin America. The point is, however, that anarchism proliferates in most pre-colonial societies and can be found during times of political unrest and protest. Regardless, however, this does not make the anarchist values in Moomin Valley invalid or not working to everyone. Rather, it should be looked at as one form of anarchy. Anarchy should manifest differently according to the community that you are surrounded by. Moomin Valley shouldn't be seen as the framework to which all anarchists should work from. Rather, it should be that anarchy should manifest differently according to the community you are surrounded by. That may be in Africa, that may be in Finland, and that may be in Latin America. At the end of the day, anarchy is dependent on where you're from and the culture surrounding that area. Which leads me to my second point, community and solidarity. This theme is important to anarchy as it is truly the only feasible mechanism in which we can bring anarchy to fruition. Community and solidarity means more than just helping the people around you. Now it delves into how to be within community, while also maintaining autonomy. Accomplishing tasks in communion with others who also wish the task to be done for their own reasons. Protecting others out of love for those within your community. Allowing for solidarity to be a choice is a part of the community's autonomy. There are many times in which the group embarks on a journey and Sniff decides against going purely out of his own fear. But if he were to be pressured, he could have more fun than just staying at home. My question is, though, if he doesn't want to go, then why would you force him? Why would you assume that it would be more fun for him to go to a lighthouse on a different island and have an adventure, rather than staying home and being in his comfort zone? Instead, you should allow the choice to be his own, his and his alone. This is a part of community, and is a part of how autonomy and free association go hand in hand. This is why private property is theft. Private property, although gives autonomy in some senses to people who own that property, it's also taking away autonomy from anyone who is not allowed on that property or does not have the ability to tap into the means of production. This could be food, this could be water, this could be filtration systems. When you give that as private property, that's a detriment to most of society. Because one person cannot own natural resources that everybody needs. How can there be surprise that homelessness is an issue a lot of people deal with when a single family can own enough land for 70? So rather, in Anarchy, we would use items like land or food or even just a jacket communally by sharing off the expectation that if I help this person now, then one day they will repay me in another way. This could be sharing a fishing rod with every house, and have one house cook food for the commune on that night and alternate rotationally. Personal property that can't be used communally can stay within the possession of the owner. But when it comes to resources that need to or would like to be used communally, it should take precedence to share, since you may need or like to have something in the future from that person. Anarchy removes the disconnect and allows room for people to choose when and when not to associate with the people surrounding them. This is free association, and SNF represents this theme which coincides with community and solidarity. The next theme of Anarchy that I want to discuss in Moomin Valley is conflict solving proactively. This is an interesting one because this was my first watch and I was kind of shocked by the way the crew handled all the conflicts or negative acts that was done to the community or a person. The main villain in the show, Stinky, is actually a kleptomaniac who destroys everything in his wake and simply refuses to refuses to integrate into the society as a whole or into the community as a whole. But I'm not saying we should have killed him. I think we should have killed him. But, either way, the community in Moomin Valley looked at it in a different way. They looked at it as, instead of getting rid of this person entirely, we should just deal with him proactively. At first, I was shocked seeing how when he literally destroyed a half-year-long project Snork Maiden's brother was working on, and instead of finding the culprit, they kept the building. He simply restarted and ended up creating a better flying machine than his previous rendition. It was a shock to my system. To see a dumb mistake that ruined another person's hard work go unpunished was surprising, though I did more soul-seeking to understand why I was so shocked. Heteropatriarchy wants us to hate those who wrong us, who dominate us. It wants us to look at those who wronged us and get revenge, or find a way to reclaim our power by wronging that person in turn. An eye for an eye, so to speak. Anarchism poses a different solution, however. It poses the idea that the community is stronger than the individual, and so because of this, rebuilding is always an option. It should always be the choice, because enforcing punishment over Stinky would not bring back the flying machine. It would not solve the problem. Rather, it is better to keep building it, and build it better so that it can't explode. Because what if it exploded with people on it? This is solving conflict proactively, for the sake of betterment of everyone, or the betterment of the self, not for the sake of solving an issue or an argument or a conflict. State law and the legal system as a whole is lubricated by economic privilege, patriarchal arrangements, and racist procedures. This is clearer once we realize that the legal system does not proactively solve crime. It does not rehabilitate crime doers. Rather, they keep those people in detainment so that they can use them, i.e. for slave labor, or perhaps just for less mouths to feed in real society. The legal system and the prison system was created in order to separate the criminals from the citizens. Once this divide happens, it becomes easier to remove the autonomy of the people in prisons because the society isn't looking at these people in the prisons. They just know that they're there. They just know that they are there for a good reason. This is done by many different marginalized groups in modern day. Trans folks, black people, so on and so on. How does the legal system manifest in Moomin Valley, however? It's slightly different since there's not really much crime in Moomin Valley to begin with, which I think could be considered idealistic, but I believe the reason for this is not to say in anarchy there is no crime, but rather that crime is handled by the community, not by a single entity of authority. With authority comes power, and with power comes the abuse of said power. Something that I think handled very well in the series was the progression of the flying machine. Snork, the resident inventor of the valley, has shown a concept Emma Goldman, popular Russian anarchist in the 1900s, surmised quite well in response to the question, "What will you do with the lazy ones who would not work?" She stated, "No one is lazy. They grow hopeless from the misery of their present existence and give up. Under our order of things, every man would do the work he liked and would have as much as his neighbor, so could not be unhappy and discouraged." Snork embodies this perfectly. I mean, he worked on this project throughout winter when everyone was hibernating, not due to monetary means, but purely because he had an idea that he really wanted to accomplish. This desire is innate to humanity. So even in anarchy, we would have the loudest pot, the creepiest horror movies, and even all the most puzzling video games. Because in anarchy, the restrictions of monetary means wouldn't water down the creative output of these innovations. In the show, the flying machine doesn't get built in the span of a few episodes. It literally took Snork the entire show to complete this invention. So it really felt like we as the viewers saw all the hard work that he put into it. Though we were not necessarily involved in the creation, right? Because we only saw tidbits of his long nights and laborious building process. But we as the community may not have been necessarily involved in the building process because it was his creative process and the idea that only he could envision. But that's okay, because we trusted that he would do it, which he did. And after he did, we all got to enjoy his invention because he knew we were there to help whenever or wherever he needed it. Coming to the end, Moomin Valley is a great portrayal of how an anarchist society would change the way we live positively and possibly allow for everyone to maintain their autonomy while standing in solidarity with their community through mutual aid and proactive conflict solving. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to me rant about this obscure show from the 1990s that I think sets out a pretty fun blueprint of anarchy, while also being a great escape from a world that feels as though it is straying further and further away from a truly equal society. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you guys next episode.